War-torn Yemen has been hit by a new outbreak of cholera that has killed 115 people in just over 2 weeks. More than 8,500 others are suspected to be infected by the waterborne disease as hospitals struggle to cope with an influx of patients. This is the second outbreak of cholera in Yemen in less than a year. Polluted water or food are the possible causes. Food imports are at all-time lows in the country as many of its ports have been blockaded. The United Nations warns 17 million people, or 2/3 of the country's population, are at risk of famine.
Health officials have declared an Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. On Thursday, May 11th, the DRC's public health minister asked the World Health Organization for help responding to the outbreak. The country's assessment cites 9 suspected Ebola cases since late April. 3 of those patients have died. 6 remain hospitalized. On Friday, the WHO confirmed one of the dead tested positive for Ebola. This marks the Democratic Republic of the Congo's first Ebola outbreak since 2014. Ebola is transmitted to humans via wild animals like bats, gorillas, and porcupines. It can then be spread from human to human. The average survival rate is 50%. The latest outbreak is centered on Bawele province on the DRC's northern border with the Central African Republic. One WHO official tells Reuters, quote, "It is in a very remote zone, very forested." That's reassuring because it means health officials may be able to control and contain the virus. For United News International, I'm Matt Paul.
Hundreds of migrants have reportedly been rescued in the Mediterranean Sea. Italy's Coast Guard said rescuers saved 484 people and found the bodies of 7 men on Saturday, May 13th. It's unclear where the migrants started from, but most arriving in Italy by sea come through Libya. According to the International Organization for Migration, more than 45,000 people have arrived in Italy by sea so far this year. More than 1,200 have died in the attempt. The IOM also reports thousands more Bangladeshi, Moroccan, and Pakistani migrants have arrived in Italy so far this year compared to roughly the same period last year. According to German newspaper Welt am Sonntag, the Italian and German interior ministers sent a letter to the European Commission seeking an EU mission at the southern Libya border. The ministers said, quote, "We must prevent hundreds of thousands of people from risking their lives in Libya and the Mediterranean." For United News International, I'm Cambria Caldwell.
On Sunday, North Korea fired an unidentified projectile from a region near its west coast. South Korea's military has said the nature of the projectile is not immediately clear. Yonhap News Agency reported the projectile launched appeared to be a ballistic missile. Updates to come on this breaking news story.
They fled heavy fighting in Raqqa in search of safety and have come to this camp called Ain Issa. Now they're facing a new obstacle. Waiting in long queues to retrieve their identity documents, people living here say they are stuck because when they arrived, their documents were taken by camp officials for processing.
We need to work. I have a 20-member family. We are not going to stay here. There is no food or water. We are hungry.
I've been running from ISIL for a week now. My family does not know whether I'm alive or not. I need to go and look for them.
The Syrian Democratic Forces, a group of Arab and mainly Kurdish YPG fighters backed by the US, are closing in on the ISIL stronghold of Raqqa. The fighting has forced many from their homes. 20,000 people have arrived at this camp in recent days. The influx of refugees is causing problems for administrators in the camp.
The problem is the camp committee consists of 20 people. What can 20 officials do for 20,000 displaced people? They have to stay organized and wait in queues. Sometimes you feel suffocated.
When the displaced Syrians finally make it to this room, they have to dig through thousands of documents, hoping to find their own. Once they do, they hope to be on the move again, in search of a more permanent place to call home. The advance by the Syrian Democratic Forces towards Raqqa with the help of coalition airstrikes and US weapons has accelerated in recent days. Now the SDF says it plans on launching a full-scale military operation on the ISIL stronghold in the coming weeks. And the UN says it expects as many as 500,000 people could be forced to flee the area. Charles Stratford, Al Jazeera, Gaziantep.
Outside the federal courthouse in Seattle, a handful of demonstrators protested. Inside, a 3-judge panel heard arguments for and against President Donald Trump's travel ban.
How is a court to know if, in fact, it's a a Muslim ban in the guise of national security justification.
Judge Gould, I think that's the nub of the case.
The people, united, will never be divided.
The Trump administration's attorney urged the court to disregard promises Trump made during the election campaign about a total ban on Muslim visitors and statements by surrogates saying the executive order was aimed at Muslims.
Over time, the president clarified that what he was talking about were Islamic terrorist groups and the countries that shelter or sponsor them. And over time, he and his advisors clarified that what he was focused on were groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda.
The focus, he said, should be on the language of the order itself.
The order on its face doesn't have anything to do with religion, and in operation doesn't distinguish on the basis of religion.
But the attorney arguing against the ban said Trump's statements before and after he became president gave ample evidence the ban was intended to discriminate on religious grounds, which is illegal under the U.S. Constitution.
We're not saying that we're not in favor of psychoanalysis or trying to get into the president's head. You don't, Your Honor, need to be Sigmund Freud in order to affirm the district court. You just simply must ask, as the Supreme Court has told you, what would an objective observer think with these sorts of statements?
Trump's ban has been blocked repeatedly by federal courts, but his spokesman said the White House would ultimately prevail.
The executive order is fully lawful and will be upheld.
North Korea's latest missile launch is drawing worldwide condemnation. The missile landed in the Sea of Japan after traveling more than 400 miles on Sunday, May 14th. On Monday, state-run media said the launch tested the North's ability to carry a, quote, large-size heavy nuclear warhead. It marked the North's first missile launch since South Korean President Moon Jae-in took office last week. And it prompted Moon to call his first National Security Council meeting. U.S. President Donald Trump's press secretary said, quote, North Korea has been a flagrant menace for far too long. Speaking on ABC's This Week program, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley said the United States will, quote, continue to tighten the screws. She added the entire international community will work to isolate North Korea and send a message that its missile launches are not acceptable. The United Nations Security Council will reportedly meet Tuesday to discuss the test. For United News International, I'm Matt Paul.
Syrian state media has said that more than 2,000 civilians and rebels have left a devastated district on the outskirts of Damascus for the rebel-held Idlib province, bringing the government closer to cementing its control over the country's capital. The Syrian army had been bombarding Karbun for 2 months with aerial strikes and artillery shelling. However, the rebels finally agreed overnight to a secret evacuation deal after being cornered in a small pocket of the district. An officer from local council of Karbun said the regime would not accept anything but a military solution.
As reports of thousands of computers infected by the WannaCry virus poured in from countries in Asia, some critics pointed the finger at the U.S. intelligence agencies. In a blog post, Microsoft CEO Brad Smith slammed the U.S. National Security Agency for allowing hackers to steal technology exploiting computer vulnerabilities later used by cybercriminals. He equaled the incident to having a Tomahawk missile stolen. Russia's President Vladimir Putin, on a visit to China, also criticized the U.S. intelligence agencies for losing control over their own creation.
We are fully aware that the genies, in particular those created by secret services, may harm their own authors and creators should they be let out of the bottle. And this issue needs to be urgently addressed on a political level to elaborate ways to curtail this.
Vladimir Putin said the country's computer infrastructure has not suffered serious damage. Yet Russian media reported that the Interior Ministry and the investigative committee were affected. Some Russian mobile companies and the Russian railroad servers and websites reportedly also experienced a short-term disruption. Government agencies acted quickly to isolate and block the virus. Local cybersecurity experts say this latest attack was just a start.
Given that the criminals have only raised some $40,000, which is very little for ransomware, I think it was just a test of the NSA tools stolen earlier this year and their effectiveness.
Though programmers managed to slow down the virus over the weekend, cybercriminals have reportedly cracked their code. And further aftershocks cannot be ruled out, especially in Russia, where many computers run on outdated software.
It's unclear whether the energy or water supply systems have been affected. Many of them run on unpatched Windows software, so they could have been hit, but most of them operate in isolated environments, and that could have saved them.
While cybersecurity experts work on an effective antidote to the recent virus, questions over who was behind the attack and whether governments across the globe can avert similar crimes in the future remain unanswered. Daria Bondarchuk, CGTN, Moscow.
A group carried torches at a rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, protesting plans to remove a statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee. The Daily Progress reports the protests on May 13th quickly ended after police arrived about 10 minutes later. Charlottesville Mayor Mike Signer condemned the rally in a Facebook post, writing it, quote, harkens back to the days of the KKK. The protest was led by white nationalist Richard Spencer. Spencer's Periscope account live-streamed him addressing another rally in Charlottesville earlier that day.
But the fact is, what brings us together is that we are white. We are a people. We will not be replaced.
Charlottesville plans on selling the Lee statue, but a judge issued a legal injunction earlier this month that will postpone the sale for at least half a year. For United News International, I'm Neela Uni.
2 transgender cadets set to graduate from military academies in the U.S. this month will not be allowed to serve in the military among its newest commissioned officers. The cadets, who hail from Air Force and Army academies, will graduate in May if they pass their final exams. However, the military branches will not let the cadets join their ranks following graduation, because the Pentagon has not yet established procedures for accepting transgender troops. Former Defense Secretary Ash Carter lifted the Pentagon's ban on transgender troops last year, allowing current military members to serve openly. But policy has not yet been set for accepting new transgender troops into the ranks. That policy is set to be developed later this year, leaving these 2 cadets in limbo. There are as many as 6,600 transgender troops in the active duty military force of about 1.3 million, according to estimates. For United News International from Washington, D.C., I'm Caitlin Mangum.
The White House has strongly denied media reports accusing President Donald Trump of revealing highly classified intelligence information to Russia. High-ranking U.S. officials, including Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, issued statements backing the president. According to the Washington Post newspaper, Trump relayed information from a critical source of intelligence on the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq when meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in the White House last week. The report also said the information was provided by a U.S. partner through an intelligence sharing arrangement, but the partner did not give the U.S. permission to share that information with Russia. However, it is unlikely Trump broke any laws since the U.S. president has broad authority to declassify government secrets.
A magnitude 5.7 earthquake struck the province of North Khorasan in northeast Iran on Saturday, May 13th. 2 people have died and nearly 400 are injured as a result. The U.S. Geological Survey reports the epicenter of the quake was only 50 kilometers from Iran's border with Turkmenistan. According to local news, the earthquake hit 3 cities and 97 villages in the province. The quake has left a number of the villages in ruins. Iran lies on major fault lines and has suffered deadly earthquakes before. Only last month, a magnitude 6.1 quake rocked the city of Mashhad, also in northeast Iran. Press TV reported at least 2 people died as a result of the quake. On Monday, the Islamic Republic News Agency said aid workers and rescue dogs have been deployed to help with the aftermath of the current situation. For United News International, I'm Rachel Latham.
The UN Security Council on Monday strongly condemned the DPRK of its latest ballistic missile test. A 15-member council vowed to take further measures, including sanctions. Sunday saw the DPRK's latest test of a ballistic missile, which Pyongyang said was capable of carrying a heavy nuclear warhead. The UN Security Council said in a unanimous statement it was ready to impose further sanctions on a country and demanded a halt to further nuclear and ballistic missiles tests. The council is expected to discuss its next steps during a closed-door meeting on Tuesday.
The U.S. is accusing the Syrian government of carrying out mass killings and burning the bodies in a crematorium. The U.S. State Department released satellite images on May 15th of a military prison outside Damascus. Stuart Jones, acting Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs, said the U.S. believes about 50 detainees are being hanged every day at the prison.
Jones then alleged the bodies are being burned to destroy evidence. The New York Times reports the State Department said parts of the building's architecture are consistent with what a crematorium looks like. The U.S. also said that a photo from January 2015 shows the rest of the complex covered in snow, but the roof of the suspected crematorium doesn't have any snow on it. The State Department suggested that means a lot of heat was coming from inside. Jones called on Russia to hold Syria accountable. For United News International, I'm Milet Uni.
The U.S. State Department has approved a $2 billion sale of missiles to the United Arab Emirates. The Pentagon said May 11th that it had approved the sale of 60 Patriot Advanced Capability 3 and 100 Patriot Guidance Enhanced Missile tactical missiles. It also includes canisters, support equipment, and spare and repair parts. In addition, logistics and technical support from both the U.S. government and the contractors, Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, will be provided. The notice said that the proposed sale, quote, will contribute to the foreign policy and national security of the United States by improving the security of an important ally, which has been and continues to be a force for political stability and economic progress in the Middle East. The U.S. is the largest supplier of arms to the UAE, providing 63% of all major weaponry to the country since 2009. For United News International from Washington, D.C., I'm Caitlin Mangum.
The United States and Japan have called for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council to discuss the Democratic People's Republic of Korea's nuclear program after it carried out another missile test. According to the UN mission for Uruguay, which currently holds the Council's presidency, the meeting has initially been scheduled for Tuesday afternoon. The DPRK launched a ballistic missile early on Sunday, its second test firing in 2 weeks.
At the biannual GeekPong hacking competition, security geeks demonstrated that personal information in some popular bike-sharing apps can be easily stolen, and that fingerprint passwords for some smartphones can be cracked within minutes. Emerging technology in smart transport and smart homes may have security risks due to loopholes in Wi-Fi signals. You may need to think twice before installing an intelligent door lock.
I've tried the decryption method in my neighborhood. Almost all intelligent door locks can be jailbroken through their Wi-Fi signal. The lock we targeted has a market share of up to 70%, and the company said they have over 1 million users.
Of course, the do-good hackers won't use their savvy to infringe. Instead, they disclose the bug to GeekPong organizers, who then pass the information on to manufacturers. It's believed at this hackers convention that all smart devices are vulnerable, and the white hat hackers are trying to reveal the vulnerabilities by accessing or controlling the various devices and then warn related firms to try to fix them. GeekPong initiator and organizer Wang Qi believes knowledge of cybersecurity is best used to defend, which motivated him to found the King Team, a crew of cybersecurity technicians.
GeekPong projects are very creative, targeting problems people hardly think of, and they are very close to everyday life. At first, some companies did not understand and objected to the event, but now many support us because they know we help make their products better.
Now the competition is sponsored by technology firms such as Microsoft, Baidu, and Tencent.
GeekPong is forward-looking and keeps in pace with the fast developments of the internet and smart technology. It drives research and talent training for the future in areas such as artificial intelligence.
The technology firms welcome more white hat hacker events like this, because the earlier and the more vulnerabilities that are found, the safer tech products are. Now Dan for CGTN, Hong Kong.